Hello, my dear family. Before we begin tonight's story, tell me, where are you watching from? I love seeing our family from every corner of the world. Drop your country in the comments, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because tonight's story is one that chills the bones. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1, The Note That Shouldn't Exist. It started with a sound I hadn't heard in months. A soft scratch, scratch against my front door. Not a knock, not footsteps, just something being slid under the wood. I froze in the middle of my living room, the old floorboards cold beneath my feet. Outside, the wind hissed through the pine trees that surrounded my lonely house. It was almost midnight, the hour everything wrong in this world seems to wake up. For a moment, I thought maybe it was just the wind or a branch brushing the steps, until I saw it. A small, folded note pushed halfway under my door. The edges were slightly crumpled, as if whoever placed it there was trembling. I stared at it, my chest rising and falling too quickly. Nobody visited me. Nobody even came near this road after dark. And nobody, absolutely nobody, should know about the notes. Not after what happened. Not after his disappearance. My hands shook as I bent to pick it up. The paper was cold, damp from the night air. I unfolded it slowly, afraid of the handwriting I already suspected would be there. But it wasn't familiar. It wasn't his. It was newer, sharper, almost desperate. One sentence. Tell me what you did to my father. I stepped back. So quickly, I almost tripped over the rug. My throat tightened. No one should know. No one should accuse me. Not after all these years trying to bury the past, literally and figuratively. My heart pounded in my ears as I reached for the doorknob. I yanked the door open, and there he was. A boy, maybe 15 or 16. Tall, but thin in a way that suggested hunger or sleepless nights. Messy dark hair, eyes full of grief he was too young to understand. And in his hand, he held another note. He lifted it as if he expected me to recognize it immediately. Please, he said, voice cracking. You have to tell me what happened. My father disappeared near this house. They said you were the last person who saw him. Everything around me seemed to tilt. The cold air, the trees, his trembling hand, because the note he held wasn't just any note. It looked exactly like the ones I used to find under my door 10 years ago, when his father was still alive and still sending me messages in the dead of night. I swallowed hard. The past had come back, in the worst possible way. Where did you get that? I whispered. The boy stepped closer, his breath fogging in the cold. It was in my father's coat, he said, found after he vanished. His eyes locked onto mine. You knew him, didn't you? You knew the truth. And now, I need to know it too. I took a step back, because I did know him. And I knew something else too. If the boy had found this note, if he had come searching at midnight, if he had tracked this house down. Chapter 2, The Father Who Never Walked Away. The boy stood on my porch like a shadow carved out of the night. His shoulders shook lightly, not just from the winter cold, but from something heavier, something he had carried for years. I opened the door wider. Come inside, I said quietly. He hesitated only a moment before stepping in. His shoes tracked thin trails of melting snow across my old wooden floor. He glanced around the room with a nervous, searching kind of energy, the way someone might look for ghosts they already believe in. He clutched the note in his hand so tightly the paper wrinkled around his fingers. I motioned toward the couch, but he didn't sit. Not yet. Instead, he looked at the framed photographs on my shelf, landscapes, old family shots, pieces of the life I'd tried desperately to rebuild after his father vanished. You lived here even back then, he asked. Yes, I whispered. I've lived here a long time. He nodded slowly, like he already knew the answer, but still needed to hear it aloud. Then, finally, he sat, and after a long moment, I joined him. The house felt too quiet, too aware. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. My father's name was Daniel, the boy began. I flinched, not visibly, but enough that he noticed. His eyebrows tightened. So you did know him? I closed my eyes. I knew him, I admitted, more than you think. The boy leaned forward, elbows on his knees, waiting, demanding the truth. And so I began. The first night. It was 10 years ago, I said, a winter colder than any I'd seen in decades. Snow so thick it erased footprints minutes after they were made. The boy nodded. My father used to talk about that winter. I almost smiled. Almost. He came to my door one night. I continued, just like you did. But he didn't knock. He left a note. I walked to a drawer at the edge of the room and pulled out a bundle of old papers tied with twine. The boy's eyes widened when he saw them. The same size, same paper type, same handwriting as the one he held. He wrote these, he whispered. Yes. I untied the twine and spread the notes on the table. I saw something tonight. They're watching the woods again. If anything happens to me, check the old shed. The boy's breathing quickened. He was warning someone, he murmured. He was warning me. The man Daniel used to be. I sat back down, feeling the weight of years pressing on my chest. The truth hurt to speak, but silence had done far more damage. Your father wasn't a runaway, I said softly. He wasn't unstable. He wasn't reckless. The boy's jaw tightened. They said he abandoned us, he said bitterly. They said he just walked out. I shook my head. No, Daniel didn't walk away from anything. He was trying to protect you. The boy blinked, stunned. Protect me from what? There it was, the question I had feared for a decade. I looked toward the window. The glass fogged from our breath, the night outside still and dark. In the reflection, I could almost see Daniel's shadow behind mine. He believed someone was following him. I said, someone dangerous, someone from the past. The boy swallowed. Past, my father never talked about anything like. He wouldn't have, I interrupted gently. He was trying to keep you safe. But he told me fragments, pieces, enough to understand he was scared. I turned back to the notes. He used to come here late at night, never during the day. Always alone, always looking over his shoulder. The boy's voice cracked. Why you? Why did he trust you? I hesitated, because Daniel and I had once been closer than we should have been, because he didn't have anyone else he could confide in, because he believed I could see the danger even when others couldn't. But I couldn't tell the boy that. Not yet. He trusted me because I listened. I said instead, because everyone else thought he was imagining things. The night he disappeared, the boy held the note in his hand as if gripping the last piece of a broken map. What happened to him? He asked. His voice was barely audible. I felt my heart thud painfully as the memory rose, vivid, brutal, unstoppable. It was late, I said, just past midnight. The woods were silent, too silent. Daniel had knocked on my door that night, the only time he ever actually knocked. He looked pale, frantic, his hair plastered with snow. He left me one last note. I said, he pushed it into my hand and begged to lock the door and not follow him. What did the note say? The boy demanded. I stood and retrieved the last folded slip of paper, the one I had never shown anyone. I placed it gently in his hand. His fingers trembled as he unfolded it. 2 sentences. It's here. If I don't come back, tell my son I didn't run. The boy wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. So he knew he wasn't coming back, he whispered. He feared it, I corrected softly. But he walked into the woods anyway. He wanted whatever was following him to stay away from you. The room felt colder, suddenly, as if the past was seeping out of the floorboards. The footprints in the snow. I watched him leave, I said, from this very window. The boy followed my gaze to the frosted glass. He walked down the path, then toward the trees, and then I paused, remembering the dread as I leaned out into the cold night. The footprints just stopped. No trail, the boy whispered. None. Like he vanished? Yes. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then the boy asked the question I had been waiting for. And the thing he said was following him. Do you know what it was? I closed my eyes. Because I did know. I had seen it. Not clearly, but enough to know it wasn't something that belonged in these woods. Your father wasn't imagining anything, I whispered. He was right to be afraid. The boy leaned back, hands shaking, breath unsteady. Then he said the sentence that chilled me to the bone. I think whatever took him wants me next. Chapter 3. The name he shouldn't have known. The wind outside my house howled like a warning as I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the boy who had read the note I never meant for anyone to see. His small hands were still shaking, and though his breath had steadied, his eyes held a fear I recognized too well, fear shaped by a truth too heavy for a child. I stepped aside and let him in. He entered cautiously, scanning the walls, the corners, the shadows, as if expecting something or someone to reveal itself. When I closed the door, the silence wrapped around us like a thick blanket. He sat on the edge of the couch, fingers worrying the folded paper. Tell me everything, I said gently. He nodded slowly, as if every memory he carried was too sharp to touch. My name is Eli, he began, and I've been searching for answers for a long time. He unfolded the note again. The handwriting was mine. The words were not meant for him. You know why he left. You know what happened that night. Tell the truth. He looked up at me with wide, tear-glossed eyes. You wrote this about my father. Why? How? I inhaled deeply because the truth was tangled in a past I had spent years trying to bury. But before I spoke, I needed to know something. Eli, how did your father disappear? He swallowed hard, and then he told me. Eli's father had always been restless, quiet, withdrawn, haunted by something his family never understood. He would disappear for hours, sometimes days, wandering alone in the woods near the old railway tracks. One night, Eli whispered. I heard him talking on the phone. He thought I was asleep. He said he was coming here. To this town, to this house. My stomach tightened. He said the person who ruined his life lived here. The boy continued. That he finally had the proof. That after tonight, everything would make sense. I closed my eyes. Proof. I knew what proof he meant. I knew exactly what he thought he had found. And I knew why he never came back. Eli's voice trembled. The next morning, his car was found near the old trail. Door open, lights on, engine still warm, but he was gone. And the police? I asked. They said he probably ran away, Eli muttered bitterly. Said he'd done it before. But I know he didn't run. Something happened, something connected to you. His words struck like cold blades. Because he wasn't wrong. Eli, I said quietly, did your father ever talk about someone named? Before I could finish, he said the name himself, a name he should not have known, a name no one had spoken out loud in 15 years, a name tied to the night everything in this town went dark. Caleb Rowan. My pulse hammered. He shouldn't have known that name. No one should have known that name, not unless they were there that night, in the woods, when the truth broke open like a scream. But Eli whispered it, with certainty, as if it lived inside him. How do you know that name? I asked, my voice barely steady. He slowly reached into his backpack and pulled out something wrapped in a torn handkerchief. He placed it on the coffee table. "Because this is what my father found," he said, "and it's the reason he came here." I unwrapped the cloth, and the world seemed to tilt. Inside was a rusted metal badge, a badge with a name scratched into the back. Caleb Rowan, Deputy. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. This shouldn't exist. That badge was supposed to be buried, burned, destroyed. It was the last remaining piece of the truth I had spent half my life hiding. Eli watched my reaction carefully. "You know him?" he said. "You know what happened to him. And you know why my father disappeared." He wasn't asking. He was accusing. I forced myself to sit again, though my hands were trembling. "Eli, if your father found this badge, it means he got closer to the truth than anyone ever has." My voice cracked. "And that's why he vanished." The boy didn't move. He didn't blink. "What truth?" he asked. I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, I understood why his father had been afraid. Because in the boy's face, I saw the same expression of someone who once trusted me completely right before everything went wrong. "Eli," I whispered, "what I'm about to tell you, your father died trying to uncover." His breath caught. The lights in the living room flickered. The wind banged against the window like a warning. "He didn't run away," I said slowly. "He didn't disappear." I swallowed hard. "He was taken." Eli's eyes widened. "By who?" he whispered. I looked toward the dark hallway, feeling that old dread rise again. Not who. What? And somewhere outside, buried in the night, something creaked, slow, heavy, deliberate, as if the past we tried to bury had finally come home. Chapter 4. The Shadow on the Stairwell. The moment the house fell silent again, Eli and I both turned toward the hallway, toward the direction of the sound neither of us wanted to acknowledge. A slow, dragging creak, not like a person walking, more like weight shifting, something leaning its full body on the old wooden staircase. The kind of sound that doesn't belong in a lived-in home. The kind of sound that only comes from something returning to a place it never should have left. Eli's fingers tightened around the old deputy's badge. I raised a hand gently, guiding him behind me as we both stared into the dim hallway. The air felt suddenly colder, sharp, metallic, like the moment before a storm breaks. Another creak, then a soft thud, as if someone had taken a single step onto the bottom stair. "Is someone else here?" Eli whispered. "No," I said, steadying my breath. "Not anymore." The boy looked confused, but I didn't explain. Not yet. I wasn't ready to say the thing out loud. Not when the truth wasn't just a memory, but something that could still move, still return, still stand on the other side of the dark. I stepped forward slowly. The hallway stretched ahead, long and narrow, wallpaper peeling at the corners, shadows clinging to the walls like damp moss. Every footstep I took echoed too loudly. When I reached the edge of the hallway, I saw it, a shape, barely visible in the shadows. Still, watching, like a dark silhouette pressed against the base of the staircase. I froze, not because of fear, but because I recognized the shape. Broad shoulders, a tilted posture, the faint outline of a hat that should have been buried with him. "No," I whispered. "It can't be." Eli's voice cracked behind me. What is that?" I didn't answer, because every nerve in my body was telling me something impossible. I was looking at the same figure I saw that night in the woods. The night Caleb Rowan vanished. The night he was swallowed by something we could never identify. But it wasn't just a figure. It wasn't just a shadow. It was waiting. The temperature dropped further. My breath fogged out in a thin cloud. Eli stepped closer, whispering, This is about my dad, isn't it? What you saw that night is what took him too. I didn't look away from the figure. Your father went searching in a place that was never supposed to be found. I finally said, and whatever he uncovered, whatever he awakened, it followed him. The silhouette shifted. Barely, but enough that I felt it, not saw it, leaning forward, listening. Eli clutched the deputy's badge, like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Tell me, he demanded softly. Tell me what really happened to Caleb Rowan. I inhaled shakily. Your father thought Caleb died because of something I did. I forced the words past the tightness in my throat. But that's not what happened. The figure on the stairs twitched again. Not moving closer, but moving wrong. Like its limbs didn't remember how to be human. 15 years ago, I said, Caleb and I found something out by the old railway trail. Something buried. Something we weren't supposed to disturb. The boy's eyes widened. What was it? I swallowed. A door, I whispered. In the ground, covered with planks and dirt, and carved into it was a symbol that's been haunting this town long before either of us were born. The hallway dimmed further. The creaking sound deepened. When Caleb pried it open, my voice cracked. Something came out. Eli took a step back. What came out? He whispered. I looked straight at the shadowed figure. It didn't have a name, I said. At least not one we understood. The figure's head slowly tilted. A low, rasping exhale drifted from the darkness. Like breathing. Eli flinched. Is it alive? It's whatever is left of what touched Caleb that night. I said quietly, and your father. He reopened what Caleb tried to seal. The badge in Eli's trembling hands suddenly rattled, like metal reacting to a magnetic pull. A soft click sounded. The figure on the stairs stepped forward. Just one step, but the entire house shuddered. I grabbed Eli's arm. We have to go, I said urgently. But my dad. We can't help him if we're dead. Eli's lip trembled, but he didn't resist. I pulled him back toward the front door. The lights flickered as the air grew heavy and cold. Behind us, the breathing grew louder, closer. A warning hissed through the shadows. Not words, not language, but a sound that meant stay. We didn't. I pulled the door open, and the moment the night air hit our faces, I felt it. The thing inside the house wasn't trying to reach us. It was trying to keep us from leaving. Eli looked up at me. What is it doing? He whispered. I stared back at the house, feeling a truth I didn't want to accept tightening in my chest. It's protecting something, I said. Something your father found. The wind whipped hard, scattering leaves across the porch. And behind us, from deep inside the hallway, a voice finally spoke. A voice broken, strained, and impossible. A voice that shouldn't exist. It said one word. Stay. Eli's face went white. That sounded like. I shook my head sharply. No, don't believe it. That's not him. But fear flickered in Eli's eyes. Because he heard it too. The voice sounded exactly like his father. Chapter 5. The voice that followed us down the road. We ran, not because running made sense, but because staying inside that house meant letting something ancient, something patient, close the door behind us. Eli stumbled down the porch steps, his breath visible in the cold night air. I grabbed his wrist and kept him moving, my boots thudding against the gravel as we reached the road. Behind us, the old house sat in silence. Too much silence. A silence that felt aware. Eli's chest rose and fell rapidly. That voice, that was my dad. I know it was. I know his voice. It wasn't, I said firmly, though my heart was still slamming against my ribs. It mimicked him. It wants you to listen. It wants you to go back. Eli shook his head violently. No, you didn't hear it right. It said stay, like my dad needed help. I turned him to face me. Eli, listen carefully. Creatures that live in the dark don't need to overpower you physically. They just need you to believe them. He froze, and then the wind shifted slowly like a curtain pulling back, and we both heard it, a single word drifting from the house. Eli, the boy's blood ran cold. This time, the voice was softer, broken, trembling. Help. Eli took a half step forward before he even realized he was moving. I grabbed him. Stop. That's him, he insisted, tears burning in his eyes. That's my dad. He's inside. He's trapped. We can't just leave him. That's exactly what it wants, I said, lowering my voice. You think it didn't learn his voice? You think it didn't listen the night he came looking for answers? I shook my head. Eli, it's not just imitating him. It's studying you. Eli's face twisted with confusion, fear, anger. How do you know that? He whispered. Because I had heard that same false voice 15 years ago, in the woods, calling my name with Caleb's exact tone. Even though Caleb was already gone. But I didn't want to say that. Not now. A moment later, something shifted behind us. Not a step, not a whisper, just a presence. A pressure that pressed against our backs, heavy and cold. Eli noticed it too. His breath hitched. We need to go, I said. Now. We turned and walked faster, almost running again, down the long rural road. The tall pines swayed overhead, branches scraping against each other like skeletal fingers. A rustling came from somewhere to our right, then a soft crunch of footsteps, but not steady footsteps, staggered, dragging, watching. Eli stepped closer to me, voice cracking. It followed us. I know. Why? What does it want? Wind tore across the road, scattering pine needles. I swallowed hard. Your father disturbed something out there in the woods, I said, forcing the truth out. And it's been waiting for someone connected to him to come back. Connected how? You, I said. And me. Eli looked at me sharply. You. He frowned. What does this have to do with you? I didn't answer at first. Instead, I kept walking until the trees thinned and we reached the old iron bridge, the same bridge that marked the edge of the county line. A single street lamp flickered overhead, its yellow glow warping in and out. Eli stepped under the lamp, shivering. And then I said it, because your father wasn't the first person to go looking for the truth. He blinked. What do you mean? I took a slow breath. I told you Caleb, and I found the door buried in the ground. My voice lowered, but I didn't tell you the rest. Eli stayed silent, watching me closely. After it came out, Caleb didn't just disappear. The memory burned like a hot coal in my chest. He came back. Eli went still. What? 2 days later, I whispered. He came back to my window in the middle of the night. Eli's mouth fell open, confusion flooding his face. But you said he died. He did, I said, my voice tightening. He was dead long before he walked back to my window. Eli staggered back a step. Are you saying what I think you're saying? That thing doesn't just kill. I said, it wears you like clothing, like memory, like a mask. And your father, he opened the same door Caleb did. Wind ripped across the trees again, and from the far side of the bridge, we heard it, a low, rattling exhale. It echoed under the metal beams, vibrating through the rails like a whisper trapped in the steel. Eli froze. What was that? It followed us this far. I said, it doesn't want to lose you. Eli's eyes reddened. Anger simmered beneath his fear. What does it want with me? I finally looked him in the eyes. It thinks you know where your father went next. Eli blinked hard, tears slipping down his cheeks. But I don't. I don't know anything. Yes, I said quietly. You do. I reached into my coat and pulled out the folded note he had slipped under my door. The note that started all of this. The note with one sentence written, almost scribbled, at the bottom. He said the truth is buried where his shadow never left. Eli stared at it like he'd never seen it before. That line, I whispered, isn't just a clue. A shadow moved across the far end of the bridge. Slow, dragging, unmistakable. I grabbed Eli's arm again. It's a direction, I said. A location. Eli wiped his face with a shaking hand. Then tell me, he begged, where is it leading us? I looked over the rails, toward the dark silhouette approaching. Some truths can only be dug up once. And this one had been waiting for 15 years. Eli, I swallowed. Your father's shadow never left the place where Caleb died. The boy's face drained of color. You mean the railway trail? I nodded. And the door, I said, the one buried in the woods. The shadow at the end of the bridge stopped. Silent. Watching. It wants you to go back there, I said. And we're running out of time. Chapter 6. The place where shadows don't move. We walked toward the old railway trail, like two people moving through a memory we didn't want to relive. The deeper we went into the forest, the colder it became. Not the normal cold of night, but a cold that felt intentional, as if the darkness itself recognized us. Eli stayed close beside me, his breaths shallow and uneven. Is this where he disappeared? He whispered. I nodded. I could barely speak. This place had lived inside me for almost 2 decades. The site of my worst memory, the place where Caleb had vanished after telling me he had uncovered something too dangerous to speak aloud. We reached the clearing. The moon hung overhead like a pale witness, its light washing over the old soil. And that was when Eli stopped. A long, rectangular patch of earth lay in front of us, as if something had been freshly dug up or freshly covered. His voice cracked. Is this a grave? No, I said softly. It's a door. He turned to me, confused, and then the ground shifted, just slightly, just enough to prove it was hollow, the same hidden trapdoor Caleb had led me to all those years ago, the place he swore held proof about who was watching him, and who was threatening to silence him, except now it had been closed again. I took a shaky breath. Your father believed someone inside this town was hiding more than secrets. He thought there were records, names, dates, disappearances that pointed to one person. Eli swallowed hard. And you think they buried him to keep the truth hidden? I looked at the rectangle of soil. Or they buried what he found. Eli knelt down and brushed the dirt with his fingers. And then a sound cut through the night. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, measured. Eli shot to his feet. Someone stood at the edge of the clearing. A tall silhouette, hands in their coat pockets. Not rushing. Not afraid, just watching, the same presence we had felt behind us earlier, finally stepping into view. Eli whispered, Who is that? My mouth went dry, because I knew the shape of that coat. I knew the way that figure held their shoulders. I knew the calm, patient stillness. It's the sheriff, I said, voice barely audible. The same man who told everyone Caleb ran away. The same man who warned me to forget what I saw. The sheriff stepped into the moonlight. His expression was almost gentle, almost fatherly. It's late, he said quietly. You two shouldn't be out here. Eli clenched his fists. What did you do to my dad? The sheriff didn't flinch. He just sighed. A tired, practiced sigh. Your father, he said, found something that wasn't his to find. And he left notes he shouldn't have left. His eyes shifted to me, and I warned her not to drag you into it. Leave him alone, I snapped. But the sheriff only smiled the way a wolf might smile at a trembling deer. Then, A creaking sound beneath us. The trapdoor shifted again. Eli's eyes widened. "Something's down there," he said. The sheriff slowly lifted a small metal object. A jagged tool. The kind used to pry open old wooden boards. "No need to check," he said calmly. "I closed it for a reason." But Eli stepped backward, defiant. "No," he said. "You closed it because you're hiding what you did." The sheriff's face hardened. "You don't know what your father risked. He could have ruined everything." Eli's voice rose, cracking. "He was my dad. You don't get to decide what he deserved." The sheriff stepped forward. Just one step, but it was enough to make my pulse race. Even now, after all these years, he thought he was untouchable. But then something happened. The ground beneath the sheriff groaned, and the old trapdoor snapped open. He stumbled backward, grabbing at a tree to keep from falling in. Eli instinctively moved in front of me, shielding me, and in the moonlight, we finally saw into the dark pit below. Boxes, files, photographs, and a rusted metal lockbox with Caleb's initials carved on top. Eli gasped. "My dad, he left something behind." The sheriff's voice broke for the first time. "Don't open that." But he could not stop us. Not anymore. Eli reached down with trembling hands and lifted the metal box. It was heavier than it looked, cold as ice, covered in dust. The sheriff's shoulders slumped, as if he already knew he had lost. "This will destroy this town," he whispered. "No," I said softly. "This will finally free it." Eli opened the box. Inside were pages of Caleb's notes, a map of the town with several marked locations, and a final letter addressed to one person, to my son. If someone is reading this, then the truth has finally found its way home. "Dad." Eli's knees buckled. He held the letter to his chest, crying silently. I placed a hand on his back, steadying him. The sheriff disappeared into the trees, not running, but defeated. The clearing was silent again. The truth was no longer buried. And Eli, for the first time since knocking on my door, didn't look lost. He looked ready. "Thank you for staying with me through this story, my dear family. What a night this has been." Before you go, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing our family gathered from all over the world. If this story touched you or kept you on the edge of your seat, please like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Your support keeps this little storytelling corner alive. And remember, some truths don't stay buried forever. Not when someone brave is willing to dig them back up. I love you all. Stay safe. And I'll see you in the next story.